How to trigger an avoidant to miss you like crazy. Let's talk about avoidance, the emotionally distant Houdinis of the dating world. You've been talking to someone who seems amazing one day, only to pull away the next. They say they like you, but their actions feel like they're allergic to closeness. And now you're wondering, how do I make them miss me? Scratch that. How do I make them miss me like crazy? Now here's the truth. You don't do it by chasing, texting long paragraphs, or proving how loyal you are. That only pushes them further away. Avoidance craves space, so give it to them, not out of fear, but out of confidence. The secret isn't to play games. It's to own your value in such a powerful way that your absence becomes more attractive than your presence was desperate. You see, avoidants aren't incapable of connection. They just fear losing themselves in it. So if you show them that loving you doesn't mean losing freedom, but gaining peace, joy, and respect, you change the game. Let's flip the script. Instead of reacting to their distance, respond with dignity. When they pull away, don't fill the gap. Let them feel the silence. Let them notice what's missing when you're not around. Laughter, lightness, that magnetic energy you bring. Want to be unforgettable to an avoidant? Be the person who doesn't beg for crumbs, but walks away when they're not being fed. Because here's the paradox. The moment they feel you're no longer waiting for them, that's when they start craving you. So stop chasing, stop convincing, and start becoming. Because you can't force someone to miss you, but you can inspire it by being someone worth missing. When dealing with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, the instinctive urge is often to close the gap they create. You want to reach out, reassure, clarify, fix. But this instinct, though natural, is the exact opposite of what triggers desire in someone avoidant. Instead of drawing them closer, it often pushes them further away. The first and most powerful step you can take is to give space confidently. Not with resentment, not with anxiety, but from a place of inner stability and strength. Avoidants feel safest when they are in control of their emotional environment. When someone gets too close too quickly or demands intimacy before they're ready, they interpret that as a threat to their autonomy. That's when the distancing behaviors begin. The worst mistake you can make is trying to fight against that distance. Texting more, asking what's wrong every hour, trying to prove that you're safe and loyal. While your intention is to connect, the message they receive is that their boundaries are not being respected. What throws them off, in the best possible way, is someone who doesn't try to fill the silence. Someone who allows space to exist without panic. Confidence in space sends a powerful message. I'm okay whether you come closer or not. And this creates an entirely different emotional dynamic. You no longer feel like a demand in their life. You become a choice. And choice is the birthplace of genuine longing. There's a subtle energy shift that happens when you give space without making it feel like punishment. It's not about cold silence or the silent treatment. That's still about control. It's about living your life with presence, joy, and forward momentum while they're doing whatever internal processing they need to do. You're not retreating, you're not waiting, you're simply letting them feel what it's like when your energy isn't wrapped around them. This isn't manipulation, this is self-respect. And avoidance, though they fear closeness, are often deeply attuned to the value of someone who respects themselves. When you don't chase, you show that your world doesn't shrink in their absence. It continues to thrive. This creates contrast. While they may have had others in the past who clung tighter in moments of distance, you don't. And that difference, that's what they remember. That's what creates curiosity. That's what begins to shift the avoidant internal script from connection means losing freedom to this connection gives me space to breathe. When someone with an avoidant attachment style starts to distance themselves, they're not necessarily trying to hurt you. They're responding to a deep-seated fear of losing themselves in emotional closeness. But even with that fear, they are still human. They still long for connection, just on their terms and in a way that feels emotionally safe. That's why creating emotional value in your presence is one of the most powerful ways to inspire longing in someone who tends to pull away. It's not about convincing them. It's about becoming someone they feel better when they're around and subtly worse when they're not. Emotional value isn't created through intense conversations or constant availability. It's created through how you make them feel. Lightness, ease, fun, depth that isn't forced. These are the emotional currencies that stay with people long after the interaction ends. If your energy is consistently calm, warm, and emotionally self-contained, they begin to associate your presence with peace. And for someone avoidant who often feels overwhelmed by closeness, peace is incredibly attractive. Think about it. When someone walks away from spending time with you and feels lighter, more seen, or more centered, they start to crave that emotional state again. And that's what makes your presence valuable. It's not about what you do for them. It's about how they feel with you. So instead of trying to be more useful, more loving, or more accommodating, shift your focus to being emotionally grounded. The goal is to create a space where they don't feel pressure, but they do feel something positive, consistent, and unique when they're with you. This doesn't mean you should suppress your own emotions or pretend everything is okay when it's not. Authenticity is part of emotional value. But expressing your feelings without making them responsible for fixing or absorbing them is key. Avoidants often back away when they sense emotional chaos or dependency. So when you can be vulnerable without being emotionally explosive, you communicate emotional maturity, another rare and magnetic quality. What also increases your emotional value is unpredictability, not in a manipulative way, but in the sense that you're dynamic. You're not stuck in one emotional mode. You're not always waiting. You bring variety to the experience. Sometimes you're playful, sometimes thoughtful, sometimes distant in a mysterious but not cold way. You're always a little surprising. That variety keeps their interest alive because it subtly reminds them that they don't have you all figured out, and humans crave what they don't fully understand. Ultimately, emotional value is the emotional aftertaste you leave behind. It's what lingers when you're not there. Did they feel heard, relaxed, inspired, safe? Those feelings are powerful because avoidants often don't even know they're missing them until they're gone. And when they associate those feelings with you, that's when the missing begins. When someone avoidant begins to pull away, your first instinct might be to react, ask what's wrong, send reassuring messages, or try to fix the distance. This reaction is deeply human. We all want clarity, connection, and a sense of security. But with an avoidant, reacting in that moment often reinforces their internal belief that closeness equals pressure. Instead of drawing them in, it validates their fear and causes them to retreat further. The real power lies in learning to respond instead of react. Response is thoughtful, grounded, and composed. Reaction is urgent, emotional, and often rooted in fear. Avoidants are hypersensitive to emotional demands, especially ones they feel responsible for meeting. When they sense that your peace depends on their behavior, it triggers a kind of emotional claustrophobia. They fear being swallowed up by your needs, even if those needs are completely reasonable. So when you react with desperation or start trying to decode their behavior in real time, it can feel invasive to them, even if you're coming from a place of love. Responding, on the other hand, is about being aware of your emotions without letting them control your actions. It's the difference between noticing they haven't texted and thinking, that's interesting, I'll focus on my day and see what unfolds, versus, why aren't they texting? I need to reach out and say something right now. That gap between feeling and acting is where your power lives. It's in that space that you reclaim your emotional sovereignty. One of the most impactful things you can do when an avoidant distances themselves is nothing. Not in a passive-aggressive way, not in a manipulative silence, just a calm, grounded stillness that says, I see what you're doing and I'm not going to chase. I'll let you come back on your own if and when you're ready. This gives them the chance to notice the absence, to experience the contrast of your energy being gone, and to feel what it's like without the connection they once took for granted. The irony is, this response is often what re-engages them. Not because you're playing a game, but because you're doing what most people in their life haven't done. Respecting their rhythm without sacrificing your own self-worth. It creates a new emotional pattern. They step back, and instead of a wave of pressure meeting them, there's space. And in that space, curiosity begins to grow. Curiosity turns into wondering. Wondering turns into missing. And missing leads them right back to you. Not because you pushed, but because you didn't. Being unavailable in a healthy way is one of the most magnetic things you can do when dealing with someone who has an avoidant attachment style. This doesn't mean playing hard to get or using silence as a punishment. It means having a life that is so full, rich, and meaningful that you aren't constantly available because you're actually living. The power of your absence increases when your presence is not centered around waiting, accommodating, or proving your worth. You naturally become more attractive when your focus is on your own path, your own growth, and your own joy. Avoidants are often drawn to people who seem emotionally self-sufficient. When they sense that you are okay without them, they begin to view your time and attention as something of value, something that must be earned, not assumed. This shifts the dynamic entirely. Instead of you revolving around their emotional highs and lows, they start to notice that you're not always there. And not because you're playing games, but because you've made your own fulfillment a priority. The goal is not to be distant or indifferent, but to be selective with your energy. If someone pulls away or needs space, don't fill the gap immediately. Let it exist. Let them feel it. In the meantime, turn inward. Where can you grow? What makes you feel alive again? What passions have you set aside while investing energy in this connection? When you channel your focus into these areas, you stop waiting and start living, and that shift is palpable. People can feel the difference between someone who is busy trying to get their attention and someone who's genuinely engaged with life. The first energy feels heavy, like pressure. The second feels light, like freedom. And ironically, it's the second that makes avoidance feel safer and more intrigued. When they see that you're not emotionally leaning on them for validation or direction, they start to feel more drawn in. They wonder what's capturing your attention. They start to miss being part of your world, not because they feel obligated to be, but because it seems fulfilling and vibrant. Another part of healthy unavailability is not oversharing or being emotionally overexposed too early. Keeping a little bit of mystery, letting them learn about you in layers rather than all at once, creates intrigue. Avoidants, in particular, tend to retreat when they feel overwhelmed by emotional intensity. By pacing the connection, by holding something back for later discovery, you give them room to feel safe enough to move closer. Being unavailable in a healthy way doesn't mean closing yourself off. It means staying open, but not at the cost of your own emotional balance. You don't disappear. You don't punish. You simply prioritize yourself. And in doing that, you allow someone who fears closeness to experience the desire to come close. Not because you needed them, but because you became someone they want to be near. Shifting the power dynamic with an avoidant begins with one critical mindset. You are the prize. This isn't arrogance, it's clarity. When you operate from a place of deep self-worth, you no longer beg for attention. over-explain your value or stay emotionally available to someone who isn't consistently showing up. You stop trying to be chosen and start choosing. That shift alone is often what jolts an avoidant into noticing your absence in a way they didn't expect. Avoidants are wired to fear dependency. The moment they sense someone is overly invested in them too soon, it triggers a reflex to pull back. But when you stand in your worth and show that you are not afraid to walk away if you're not valued, you create a rare and powerful contrast. Instead of being just another person trying to win them, you become the person who is fine either way. That calm detachment paired with a warm presence when you're around can be disarming to someone used to emotional pressure. Most people react to avoidant behavior with fear. They chase, seek reassurance, or try to fix the situation. When you don't do that, when you stay composed and emotionally independent, it subtly shifts the roles. You become the emotionally grounded one, the secure base, and that becomes incredibly attractive over time. Not because you're trying to manipulate them, but because you represent safety without suffocation, connection without chaos. The truth is, avoidants don't typically miss people who make themselves too easy to access, too eager to please, or too available in the face of poor treatment. But they do notice when someone with high standards quietly exits the frame. They notice when you don't argue, don't plead, don't chase, but simply let go. That moment stays with them because it wasn't dramatic, it was dignified. And dignity has a way of haunting people in the best possible way. When you hold yourself to a higher standard and stop engaging in behaviors that scream, "Please pick me," you invite them to rise to your level or walk away. Either way, you win because your peace is not up for negotiation. And if someone wants access to your heart, your time, and your energy, they'll have to bring consistency, respect, and effort. That's not control. That's self-respect. And for the avoidant who never really had to earn love before, this can be the exact dynamic that makes them finally realize what they stand to lose and what they might want to fight for. So if you truly want to trigger an avoidant to miss you like crazy, don't chase them. Elevate yourself. Give them space, not as a tactic, but as a reflection of your strength. Fill that space with a life so full and meaningful that your absence creates a quiet ache they can't ignore. Let your emotional presence leave a mark, not by demanding to be remembered, but by being unforgettable. They may not always say it, they may not even fully understand it, but something shifts when they realize your love is not a cage, it's a choice. And the moment they feel you don't need them, that's the moment they start to wonder what life feels like with you back in it. You are not here to prove your worth to someone who can't see it clearly. You're here to embody it gracefully, confidently, and unapologetically. That's how you stop being someone they used to talk to and start being someone they quietly, consistently, and undeniably miss. Thank you for giving me your time and your trust today. I hope this message reminds you of the power you already hold, the power to create connection without losing yourself. Stay grounded, stay radiant, and remember, the most attractive thing you can ever be is at peace. Take care, and I'll see you next time.